All right, from the frozen shores of the North Saskatchewan River right here in scenic Prince Albert, Saskatchewan, this is your host, Jack Antonio, for Do You Know Jack, the podcast. And on the line with me today is the man, the myth, the legend himself, Mr. David Ellefson. How you doing, my friend?
Oi, Jack.
So listen, I mean, you've been keeping yourself busy during COVID. There's a film. This just sort of dropped on my radar, so I figured we'd talk about this first. There's a found footage horror film called Dwellers.
Right. Yeah, we're going to actually premiere it this week, coming up here at the Mad Monster Horror Convention in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Right.
Saturday night, February 20th. They've been kind enough to let us have their stage to premiere the movie, and we've been invited now to, I guess, about a dozen film festivals, which is really cool. And yeah, we've kind of got a little hit on our hands here, which is really fun. I kind of, I worked on a lot of music last year. I was kind of publicly, putting out recordings and things. And
right.
This year I'm continuing to work on a lot of music, but the way it's kind of framing, I think 2021 is going to be more about now publicly being out promoting a new book that I have called Rockstar Hitman, which is a fictional autobiography thriller, and then also the Dwellers film. So, it's kind of nice that I've got this year's books and films with music in the background, as opposed to last year where the music was in the foreground and the books and film were kind of hovering in the background for me.
Yeah, exactly. Well, now I'm curious because, I mean, when I think of the found footage genre, I mean, I think, of course, probably most famously of, maybe the Paranormal Activity films, and then maybe to a lesser extent the first Cloverfield. So, I mean, is this the type of kind of found footage that we're talking about? Like, without giving up too much of the story for Dwellers, I mean, kind of what's a general idea of what we should expect from the plot?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I think, look, Blair Witch probably made probably one of the bigger looks for the, the found footage thing.
Right.
But yeah, it's exactly what it is. And it's cool because the storyline is such that Drew Fortier, who wrote and stars in the film and directed the film, he the storyline is that there was missing homeless people in this Midwest town. So Drew puts together a documentary team to do a documentary on that topic, and then they start going missing while looking for the missing homeless people. So there's a little bit of chud written into this. I thought it was pretty clever, and it's got a little bit of a levity. Drew's very funny in his delivery.
Right.
And I'm very impressed. Drew brought it over to me, and I just kind of let him run with it. And I sort of hung his feet to the fire, saying, "Okay, February 20th, dude, you're up. Like, this is it." And we're putting it into it. Essentially, Mike Ellefson Films is the producer of the film.
Right.
And I find that it's like this with creative endeavors. First and foremost, it's about the creativity, developing the story. Whether it's a song, a movie, a book, whatever it is. And then it's nice to have a deadline going, okay, now we got to get this thing out and get it to market. And I think that's a beautiful thing that this year we've got several HorrorCon appearances, all these film festivals. So
sure.
2021 is the year of Dwellers.
Well, yeah, I mean, geez, I can't believe I didn't even mention Blair Witch. I think, when you think about found footage, like, almost the influence of Blair Witch sort of goes without saying, I guess. Maybe that's why I didn't. I'm literally like sitting here looking at a box set version of the movies like right in front of me in the studio, and I didn't even think to mention it.
Yeah, I mean, it's, look, I think that was it. But like you said, those are kind of these, the supernatural, the occult, that genre. But I mean, the found footage thing is again, it can be as sort of cheesy and hack, or it's edited properly and there's a storyline. And again, everything, again, whether it's a book, a song, a film, regardless of how much money or any of the polish that's put on it, it's always about the story.
Right. Yeah.
And, independent records, we'll put up with lesser production because we love the material. We love the song. We love the storyline, and same with books. They don't have to be, everything doesn't have to come out through one of the the big major publishers. It's always about, is there a story here, and I think that Drew did an incredible job when he was editing Dwellers to really, out of probably 5 hours of footage, to narrow it down to, hour 20, hour 30 of the story. I find there to be, that's probably this part of it that I find as fascinating as anything is editing.
Yeah.
And even when I see big high dollar films, the editing, because, again, I always say, look, a pile of riffs doesn't make a song. Someone still has to arrange it, so arranging, and in film, editing would be the same as arranging, it's sort of, you're taking all the ideas, you're taking the piles of footage that's been filmed, and how do we make sense of this and really stay true to the storyline. And I think Drew just did a fantastic job with that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know you did mention the Sledge Chronicles, and I definitely want to talk about that. I mean, here again, you've got Drew working on that with you as well. So I mean, just pivoting a little bit to the book, like, you have a fair amount of experience, writing autobiographical stuff, and then even taking it back a little further to the making music your business book. Why the foray into fiction this time around?
I think when I wrote my first book, which was Making Music Your Business, back in I wrote it really in 94, 95. It got published in 97.
Right.
And, at that time I was reading a lot of like kind of Tony Robbins, Norman Vincent Peale, a lot of these kind of self-help gurus, and I think that's what sort of led to that. At the same time, I was reading a lot of Dean Koontz, Robert Heinlein, some of these things, sci-fi to horror and all this kind of stuff. So
Sure.
I always had this hankering that, man, one day I want to write a fictional book. I was always fascinated by fiction, to just take a story out of nowhere and just craft, an idea out of nowhere, I should say, and craft a story around it. So, here we are, 25 years later. It's funny how it happened. I was on a solo tour down in South America back in late 2019. And a friend had called me and he said, "Where are you at today?" And I said, "I'm down in Sao Paulo." And he laughed and he goes, "Every time I call you, you're in a different part of the world. And, as far as we know, you're a rock star, but for all we know, you could be working for the CIA or the FBI and snuffing out bad guys, and, doing dirty deeds done dirt cheap, And I was oh man, what a great idea. So I took that and I told him, "Hey, I'm going to steal your idea, just so you know. I'll give you a thank you in the book, And he laughed. And so,
Right.
so I went with that. And I swear to God, I just started, it's funny how creative ideas just fall into your lap, out of nowhere, usually, when you're least looking for it, that's when it happens. It's kind of like falling in love, when you're not looking, there it is. And so I just started running with that idea, and I framed out the characters of the Sledge book and started kind of getting the basis of the story in place. And I really had fun doing that, character development. And I realized right away, I said, this book doesn't have to end with one book. It can kind of keep going as a series.
Yeah.
And I called Drew up and I told him my idea, and he goes, "Man," I love it. And I said, "Listen, I'm gonna need your hand with some of the gore and the guts, because that's where you're good, And just like writing a song with somebody, you know what I mean? It's like, I'm great with music, you're great with lyrics. Let's write a song. Let's be Elton John and Bernie Taupin. Let's write songs. And so Drew and I we found our it's funny, we have a pretty seamless narrative voice, that you can't really tell, well, Drew wrote that and I wrote this. It's kind of like the Beatles, you know what I mean? Whether John wrote it or Paul wrote it, it all sounded like the Beatles. And I think that's kind of the ultimate goal when you're collaborating. You want stuff to sound very consistent. And I like to collaborate, because I think we're better together. I think that two plus two, makes 5 and 6, and 7. It sometimes you're greater than the sum of its parts. So Drew and I have really found a good collaborative narrative and voice here with the Sledge Chronicles.
For sure. Well, you know what I was thinking now? I mean, there's a lot of takeaways from this book. I guess, first of all, you know, the style of the book reminded me, there used to be these old, like, kind of serial novels where, you know, you didn't necessarily need to read one before or one after. You could pick them up, and they were usually maybe about in that 200 page range. There, you know, they would be books about like an assassin or something. I'm trying to remember the words, but I mean, this was sort of this. Was this kind of? Do you know the books I'm talking about? Like there would be 25 of them, kind of thing.
I mean, look, I read even Jack Reacher, you know, which is written by Lee Child, and the same thing. You can pick up any one of those books, and it's a new story, but there's always sort of the you kind of tell the backstory. You know what I mean? There's always a little bit of that written in. Yeah, so that you can kind of tell. I mean, again, if you're going to buy Spider-Man or Iron Man or something, you know, Marvel's clever at filling you in on the backstory, the origin story, if you will.
Yeah.
But that's exactly what we thought with Rockstar Hitman. Look, the guy's a musician. He's a rock star. He's going to be traveling the world. So as he travels the world, there's an endless amount of espionage, bad guys, and all kinds of great stuff to write about. From Jason Bourne to James Bond level stuff to just, you know, all the other human nuances that happen with that, you know. And of course, me having traveled the world a million times, I've also got some experiences to draw on that, you know, of course we fictionalize them and all that. But, you know, I've been to some of these cities in Europe and I know some of the streets. I've been to the Las Ramblas and Barcelona. I know, you know, the streets of Buenos Aires, you know, and so to kind of in my mind have already stood there in those streets, and I feel like I'm pretty good at capturing the essence of that experience and being able to put that on paper. And I think that for me is it's somewhat autobiographical, you know. That's why we're calling the Sledge Chronicles, we're calling it a fictional autobiography. Because even in the books, when the POV of the character it's Sledge telling the story. It's almost like he's writing his own autobiography in these books, and I think that also plays well to the popularity of rock stars and celebrities who write autobiographies these days. You know, so. I think we found a good voice for Sledge in this thing too.
Yeah, well, that's what one of my questions was going to be is, you know, how much of yourself is in the character of Sledge? I mean, obviously, you know, to my knowledge, you're not literally a hitman, but I mean, you know.
I'm not Sledge, so yeah, it's not like I'm not him, and of course, you know, these are all fictional characters.
Yeah, of course.
But you know, I think in any good fiction. Look, if you've been to Hollywood, hey, list some of the streets. You know what I mean? Like there are places, there's some real, you know, things that you can point to that bring realism. Because fiction, you know, again, you can go as made up and fairy tale as you like, of course. But I find the best fiction when I'm reading a great fictional novel in England. I like when it plays to, you know, Heathrow airports, and then they were, you know, by, you know, whatever the Eye over London, and you know, they reference, you know, Buckingham Palace or something. You know, they reference these things because I think when you're reading fiction, you want it to be so real that it sucks you into the story, and you can't put the book down, and you go, oh my God, like that felt real, you know. That's what music does to me. You know, it's like when I listen to a Kiss record or my old Iron Maiden records, and hopefully Megadeth records do this too, that it brings the listener in and you feel like you're right in the room with us and you feel like you're part of the journey. Yeah. And, you know, to me, that's what a great song should do. Obviously movies do that, you know, for 2 hours in the cinema, we just get lost in the story. And, when the lights come on and the end credits go, you go, oh my God, like I wasn't even in the theater the last 2 hours. I was in the movie, you know?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
So for me, you know what I mean? The book needs to do the same thing. It needs to transport you right to those city streets, right to that location of Kansas City or Buenos Aires or Berlin, Germany, wherever the story may be, you know? So
right, yeah.
I think having been there, it's great. I've already kind of done the almost 40 years of research for the books.
Yeah, yeah. Well, now, I mean, you guys aren't exactly writing Shakespeare here. Like it's to entertain, of course. But I mean, I couldn't help but think like there are metaphorical aspects to Sledge's story. I mean, how many times have both of us on either side of the music business heard I would practically kill to make it into this business, or the killer be killed mentality of the business, or the cutthroat nature of the music business, and I think you guys have captured kind of that. You talk about how it's like a fictional autobiography, but I mean there's probably a veiled metaphor here or a lesson in the book as well, right?
100%. I'm glad you picked up on that, because that's exactly what it is. Like, going out to be a hitman is a literal, obviously, translation and story, but it's also very metaphorical in that how many of us, again, run off to Hollywood or wherever, Phil, to go chase our dream. Hell, today it could be some programmer going to Silicon Valley in hopes of inventing the next Facebook. I mean, we're all sort of chasing this dream, if you will, right? Whatever the dream may be. And we chase this dream, and sometimes in the chase, we get so caught up in the chase that we sort of let our good senses and our nature, pass. My dad used to tell me, don't ever sign a contract without having a lawyer look at it. And of course, some of the earliest contracts I signed, I never had a lawyer to look at it, because what does my dad know, right? And so, I always tell everybody, hey, you want to make money in the music business, become a lawyer, because you need a lawyer to get into every deal, and you definitely need a lawyer to get out of every deal.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where I think with Sledge, here he is. He's getting whisked into the tailwind of this fast-moving machine of rock and roll and celebrity and rock stardom, and he kind of loses his good-natured wits. He's a Midwest kid, so that's kind of like me. There's some to that, but he sort of loses his common sense and well, all right, I guess I trust these people. They seem like they know what they're doing, and then he, once he signs the contract, it's like, oops, you didn't read the fine print, and again, what he's sort of beholden to, of course, being a hitman. By many times I felt like, oh my God, we took the money, we took the advance, we signed the deal, and now I'm out here for the next 2 years in the yellow submarine of a tour bus or an airplane, traveling around the world, having to recoup all this money we took, and we got to play the shows, and all of a sudden now you realize you've mortgaged your future. And I think that there's a lot of similarities to that in the Sledge book, and then falling in love.
Yeah.
Can he fall in love? He's under contract to be a hitman. How do you fall in love and be a hitman? It's and that same, a lot of similarities. How do you fall in love and have a home life when you're out on the road being a rock and roller? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And sort of the dichotomy of these lifestyles. It's like, and Sledge goes through a lot of those things of, how do I have a private life and yet have this public life, and then there's a part of this public life that no one really knows about, which is what I have to do during the day being a hitman, and so again, sort of leading this secretive double life, and which I think most of us rock and rollers have gone through on some level. You know what I mean? There's this wild life on the road, and then we come back home to civilian life and have to re-enter the atmosphere of normalcy, and a lot of us, we struggle with it. I know I have over the years.
Yeah. Well, now, you mentioned how, Sledge was a kid from the Midwest and essentially just dropped everything to move out to LA. And I'm fairly certain that that's a similar story, as you already mentioned to yourself. I mean, is it even possible in this day and age, COVID aside, to still have those LA dreams of just dropping everything and running off and trying to, make a go of it? Or has that ship sailed long ago?
Well, I look, it's always possible, I guess probably, Nashville is probably the place where people go for music now more than anything.
Yeah.
Yet at the same time, I know film students, who go off to LA, or they go to Chicago, or they go to New York, and, again, they're chasing the dream. And just as much, today it isn't, back when I was growing up, it was long hair, a flying V, a Marshall stack, and, screaming girls, and let's go be a rock star. Today's rock stars are the guys who invent TikTok, and, they invent Instagram. Like, that's the new rock star, and I guess you could probably do that from, from anywhere, from your basement, or the chick who invented, what is it, Bumble, or whatever, or Bambi or whatever her new app is, the first female billionaire, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
With her dating app, so, I mean, those are the new rock stars of today.
Yeah.
And, and again, but it's the elusive, it's fast money, it's big, sexy money. It's, you're your 15 minutes of fame, go big or go home. And there's all this sort of grandiosity around it. And I think maybe in a lot of ways, that's a lot of what the old days of the music business used to be. It was sort of this, I don't have to get a job and be normal and be like everybody else if I can just go hit pay dirt, and a lot of us moved out west, and it's kind of like the old gold miners. Hey, there's gold in them there hills out in Hollywood, and so off we went, to chase the dream.
Yeah, I mean, I like how you mentioned your 1997 book, making music your business. I mean, would you feel even moderately qualified to, provide updated advice given how much the music business had changed? I mean, the digital revolution, for instance, is, the MP3 revolution knocked everything on its ass. And now we've got streaming and now COVID and everything, you know what I mean? Like,
Sure.
Has there ever been any talk of even updating the book or moving forward? Or
there was, and in fact, Hal Leonard has the rights to the book, and they probably 7 or 8 years ago they sent me a letter saying, hey, the audiobook rights are available if you want to go in and read your book. And so I did, and because I've read the audio for all my books, and I realized that book, as I was sitting there in the studio reading it, knowing some of it was going to be outdated, in particular music videos. I used a formula for advanced recoupment from your record label based on cassette, the sales of cassettes.
Damn.
Versus exactly. Versus, either vinyl or a CD. And even now today, of course, digital streaming is a whole other complex formula that is, almost none of us understand that one. But the reality is, so I sat there and I was like, oh my God. Okay. So I did a bunch of rewrites kind of right on the spot. So the sort of the updated version of Making Music Your Business is the audiobook, which you can find, I believe, on Audible, the Audible platform from Amazon. And so, yeah, if you wanted an updated one, that would be it. But you're right. I mean, look, the music business, and especially with the internet, boy, things change, like every 6 months. There's the things that, the speed at which it develops, the old formulas, of course, and the old guard of the music business, they were challenged in the 90s with Napster. I mean, that was the first time, the evil horns of the internet reared its head and said, hey, we're going a different way. And of course, the old guard of the record business who had gotten comfortable in their methodology, they got left behind. And the ones who adapted and got on board, obviously Steve Jobs, largely with Apple, pretty much saved the day for an existing music business. But, obviously since iTunes, now we have Spotify and, the digital streaming services, YouTube and all these things. So, the digital platforms, even for television, I love, I watch Cobra Kai.
That's so awesome. Yeah.
Netflix had that after play party, and Ralph Macchio was even talking about that. He said, I've been approached a lot to do the sort of another Karate Kid movie, and he said it very well. And this just goes to show he's a seasoned actor, been in the business for many years. He goes, look, with the advent of these digital platforms now, we didn't have to go try to make some blockbuster movie. We could do this in an episodial series like this. And, and again, God bless, the digital platforms being here during the pandemic, that we had, some alternatives, because the box office cinema, I mean, boy, that's gotten hit as hard as the concert business. And I think when all this stuff does come back online again, it's going to look very different. Even the concert business is, there's going to be some social distancing and, limited seating. And there's just going to be some stuff we're going to have to work around now. And they're saying, look, COVID's now here with us forever. I mean, it's not, hopefully we'll get ahead of it and be able to manage it better than what we've done the last year or so. But, it's here. It's kind of like the flu. It's here now, so it's going to be something we're going to have to be, paying attention to. And hopefully it doesn't keep rearing its head like it has. But if it does, all of these big, large gatherings and things, they're the first thing that's going to be affected. And that affects all of our lives, those of us who are live performers, So, for me, I think, look, books, movies, digital platforms, that is the path forward.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and I wouldn't argue with that. I mean, just to end things off, I noticed just in my searching that Peace Sells is turning 35 this year, and in fact, I think 35 years ago in February, you guys were going into the studio to record that record. I mean, is there any lasting, maybe this is an obvious question, but I mean, is there any lasting memory or even like something impactful that you could say about that record before I let you go, David?
Well, I have very fond memories of it. They were struggling times for us. We were very poor. So we had all those sort of lifestyle challenges, we partied a lot, so that was of our own doing. But at the same time, we knew when we did a tour, and I would call it probably our pre-production for the record. We went out a couple of months before we recorded it, and we played every song we knew. We had Killings by Business, and then all these new songs that would become the Peace Sells album. And every night when our drummer Gar would start Peace Sells with the kick drum, and then I'd kick into the bass line, and then we'd start playing the song, because of the tempo, because of this sort of just easy to follow, throbbing rhythm, and then Dave's vocal. We knew it was like, I think we got a hit on our hands here, and we actually recorded that record for our label at the time, Combat Records, which is an independent. And then thank goodness on that tour, Tim Carr from Capitol Records came down to Irving Plaza in New York City and saw us play, and he liked what he saw. And pretty quickly, the major labels were showing interest, and he jumped in with the best offer, and we took his offer and, signed to Capitol Records, and, the rest is history. I mean, that was our big major label debut. And, some would argue one of the great records from our catalog. Obviously the title, the logo, the Vic Rattlehead, our mascot on the cover, the artwork, it was pretty much an all-in package. It said, this is what Megadeth is, and this is what these guys are about.
Well, that's a good spot to end, David. I really appreciate it. And of course, you've got some film, stuff that you mentioned off the top, some conventions and different things to, shop dwellers. And I think you and Drew are going to be, also talking about the book and those same dates. So, if you wanted to throw out those dates one more time, that would be wicked.
Sure. So February 20th, 7 p.m., Mad Monster HorrorCon in Charlotte, North Carolina, is Embassy Suites Hilton Hotel is where the convention is held there, and it's actually in Concord, the city of Concord, just outside of Charlotte.
Right.
That will be where we're premiering the film this week, and then we have Crypticon in Minneapolis, I believe, in I believe that's May or June. These will all be posted up on davidellefson.com, as well as posted up on across all my Facebook, Instagram, and everything. So, and I think there's 3 more Crypticons, and I believe maybe even Days of the Dead coming up. So, up through October. So we got a handful of good looks to be rolling the film out here.
Right on. And of course, Sledge, the Sledge Chronicles, Rockstar Hitman is available on your website, and I believe probably on other platforms where books are sold.
Yeah, Drew. So that's it's Ellefson Book Company is the publisher on that, and but it's easily available through Amazon, both hard and soft cover, as well as the audiobook and all Kindle and e-reader versions, as well as BarnesandNoble.com, and that's BNN.com. So you've got a couple of different options there. to order that, and that's out now. That's available now.
Right on, David. Well, thank you so much for your time here on Do You Know Jack, the podcast. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. See you, man.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.